At my daughter's birthday, I found her kick in the trash. My sister sneered. She didn't deserve it anyway. I took my kid and left. The next morning, Mom called, crying. Please talk to the venue before they cancel your sister's wedding. My name is Mary, and I'm a 34-year-old single mom to the most amazing 8-year-old girl named Emma. What happened last weekend has completely shattered my relationship with my family. And honestly, I don't think there's any coming back from this. Let me give you some background. My younger sister, Victoria, has always been the golden child. She's 29, stunning, successful, and engaged to a wealthy hedge fund manager named Preston. Everything in her life seems perfect, at least on the surface. Growing up, I was always the responsible one, the reliable daughter who helped with everything, while Victoria got all the attention and praise for simply existing. When I got pregnant with Emma at 25, my ex-boyfriend, Marcus, bailed immediately. I had just turned 26 when she was born. My parents were disappointed but supportive, though I always felt like I'd let them down. Victoria, on the other hand, never let me forget it. She'd make little comments about my choices, about how I was struggling financially, about how Emma didn't have a father figure. But I bit my tongue because family is family, right? Fast forward to 3 weeks ago. Emma's 8th birthday was coming up, and she'd been talking about it for months. She wanted a princess-themed party with all her friends from school. I'd been saving money for half a year to make this happen. As a medical receptionist, I don't make much, but I wanted to give my daughter something special. I booked a community center, ordered decorations, arranged for a face painter, and most importantly, I commissioned a custom cake from this amazing local baker, Princess Castle cake that cost me $450. I know that sounds extravagant, but Emma had seen a picture of something similar online, and her eyes had lit up like stars. I picked up extra shifts for 2 months to afford it. My parents offered to help host the party at their house since they have a big backyard, and honestly, it would save me some money on the venue. I was grateful and accepted. Victoria was supposed to be there too, though she'd been acting weird about the whole thing, making comments about how elaborate the party was for just a kid's birthday. The party was scheduled for Saturday at 2:00 p.m. I arrived at my parents' house at 10:00 a.m. to set up. The cake was supposed to be delivered at noon, and I wanted everything perfect before the guests arrived. My mom, Patricia, was helping me hang streamers and balloons. My dad, Robert, was setting up tables in the backyard. Victoria showed up around 11:00 a.m. with Preston. She immediately started criticizing the decorations, saying they looked cheap and that the color scheme was too childish. I reminded her it was a party for an 8-year-old, but she just rolled her eyes. Preston seemed uncomfortable with her attitude, but didn't say anything. When the cake arrived, I was so excited. The delivery person brought it in, and it was even more beautiful than I'd imagined. The castle towers were perfect, complete with edible glitter and little fondant princesses. Emma wasn't there yet because my best friend Sarah had taken her to get her nails done as a special birthday treat, so I wanted to surprise her with a cake. I carefully placed the cake in my parents' dining room, away from the setup chaos. I took about a dozen photos of it because I was so proud. This cake represented so much sacrifice and love. I covered it with a cake dome to keep it safe and went back outside to finish decorating. Around 12:30 p.m., Victoria pulled me aside. She seemed agitated and her face was flushed. She said she needed to talk to me about something important regarding her wedding. Victoria's wedding was scheduled for exactly 2 weeks after Emma's birthday, and she'd been increasingly stressed about it. She started going on about how her wedding planner had messed up some detail about the centerpieces, and she needed me to call some vendor right then and figure it out. I told her I'd help her after the party, but right now I needed to focus on Emma's birthday. She got this look on her face, this twisted expression of fury that I'd never seen before. "Of course," she hissed. "Everything is always about Emma, your precious little mistake who you parade around like she's royalty." I was stunned. I told her that was completely inappropriate and walked away. I should have known something was wrong then, but I was too focused on making sure everything was ready. Guests started arriving at 1:30 p.m., and by 2 p.m., we had about 20 kids running around the backyard along with their parents. Emma arrived at 2:15 p.m., and her face, when she saw all her friends and the decorations, was worth every penny and every extra shift. She was wearing a princess dress I'd found at a consignment shop and had altered to fit her perfectly. She looked absolutely radiant. The party was going wonderfully. The face painter was a huge hit. The games were fun, and Emma was having the time of her life. Around 3:30 p.m., it was time for cake. I asked my mom to help me bring it out, and we walked into the dining room together. The cake dome was still there, but something felt wrong. When I lifted it, my heart stopped. The cake stand was empty except for crumbs and smears of frosting. I looked around frantically and saw the trash can in the corner. My stomach dropped. I walked over and looked inside. There was my beautiful 3-tier princess castle completely demolished and thrown away. Someone had taken their hands and destroyed it, smashing the towers, scraping off the decorations, reducing months of my savings to rubble before dumping it in the garbage. I stood there in shock, unable to process what I was seeing. My mom gasped beside me. I heard footsteps and turned to see Victoria standing in the doorway with this smug expression on her face. "What happened to the cake?" I asked, my voice shaking. Victoria shrugged. I threw it away. It was taking up too much space in the dining room, and honestly, Emma didn't deserve it anyway. "You spoil that child when you can barely afford to take care of yourself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You threw away my daughter's birthday cake. The cake I saved for 4 months to buy." "Oh, please, Mary. Stop being so dramatic. It's just a cake. You act like Emma is the center of the universe when really, she's just a reminder of your poor life choices. My wedding is in 2 weeks, and nobody cares about some kid's birthday party when there's actually something important happening in this family." My mother tried to intervene, saying something about Victoria being stressed, but I wasn't hearing it. I walked past Victoria through the house and out to the backyard. I found my dad and told him what happened. He looked horrified, but also helpless, like he didn't know how to fix this. I gathered Emma, who was confused about why we weren't having cake. I told her there had been an accident and we needed to leave. She started to cry, and seeing my daughter's tears because of my sister's cruelty was the final straw. I packed up Emma's presents that had already been opened, apologized to the other parents, and walked out of that house. Sarah helped me get Emma into my car. My daughter was sobbing, asking me what she'd done wrong, why we had to leave her own party. I assured her she'd done nothing wrong, that sometimes adults make terrible mistakes, but inside I was barely holding it together. That evening, I took Emma to her favorite diner. We ordered her favorite meal, and I bought her a small cake from the grocery store. It wasn't the castle cake she deserved, but I tried to make the best of it. She fell asleep that night, still in her princess dress. Tears dried on her cheeks, and I cried in my own room for hours. The next morning, Sunday, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. It was my mother. Her voice was panicked, almost hysterical. "Mary, you need to call Willowbrook Estate right now. They're threatening to cancel Victoria's wedding. Please, you have to fix this. She's devastated." I was confused. Willowbrook Estate was a venue where Victoria was getting married. It was this exclusive, expensive place that required a massive deposit and had a waiting list that was usually a year long. But what did I have to do with them? "Mom, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would they cancel? And what does that have to do with me?" My mother's voice got even more frantic. "The owner called Victoria this morning and said they're canceling her wedding contract. Something about the person who paid the deposit, withdrawing their authorization and demanding a refund. Victoria said, 'You were the one who helped her set up the payment, and now the venue is threatening legal action if she can't provide a new deposit immediately. You need to call them and explain there was a mistake.'" I sat there in my bed, completely bewildered. I had never helped Victoria with anything regarding her wedding venue. I'd never even been to Willowbrook Estate. I told my mother this, but she insisted I must have forgotten that Victoria said I'd helped her with the financial arrangements. "Mom, I never touched anything related to Victoria's wedding payments. I don't know what she's talking about. And honestly, after what she did to Emma yesterday, I don't really care about her wedding problems." My mother started crying. "How can you be so cruel? Your sister made a mistake yesterday. She was stressed, but now her entire wedding is falling apart, and you won't even make one phone call to help fix it." I hung up. I couldn't deal with this manipulation. 20 minutes later, Victoria called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mary, you vindictive," she screamed into the phone. "You did this on purpose. You sabotaged my wedding because you're jealous that I'm actually successful and happy." "Victoria, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't do anything to your wedding. Don't lie to me." The venue said the deposit authorization was withdrawn and they're demanding a new payment or they'll cancel everything. You were the one who set up that account for me. Now they're canceling everything, and I'm going to lose my wedding date unless I can come up with another deposit immediately. I never set up any account for you. I've never had anything to do with your wedding planning. You're delusional. There was a pause. Wait, you really don't know what I'm talking about? No, Victoria. I have no idea what's happening with your venue. But honestly, after what you did to Emma, I wouldn't help you even if I could. She hung up, and I sat there trying to piece together what was going on. About an hour later, I got a text from Preston, Victoria's fiancé. It was long and apologetic. The text explained that Preston had finally had enough of Victoria's behavior. He'd been having doubts about the wedding for months, watching how she treated people, including me and Emma. Yesterday at the party, when he saw what Victoria did to the cake and heard what she said about Emma, something snapped for him. He'd gone home and made a decision. He had paid the venue deposit from his personal account. And that morning, he called Willowbrook Estate and told them he was withdrawing his payment authorization and requesting a full refund since he was calling off the wedding. The venue policy required both parties to authorize the deposit, and without his consent, they couldn't keep his money. He told them Victoria would need to provide a new deposit if she wanted to keep the date, knowing full well she couldn't afford it on her own. Preston's text continued, saying he was breaking up with Victoria and calling off the wedding entirely. He said he couldn't marry someone capable of such cruelty toward a child, and yesterday had shown him the true nature of the woman he'd been planning to spend his life with. He apologized for the drama this would cause and asked if there was anything he could do to make up for what Victoria had done to Emma. He ended the text by saying he'd already sent a payment to my Venmo account, the same amount as the destroyed cake plus extra, and that he hoped Emma could have a proper celebration. I checked my Venmo, and there was indeed a payment from Preston for $1,200 with the note for Emma's proper birthday celebration. I'm sorry for everything. I sat there staring at my phone, processing everything. Victoria's wedding was canceled, but not because of anything I'd done. Her own fiancé had finally seen her true colors and called it off. And somehow my mother and Victoria had immediately assumed I was responsible and attacked me for it. My phone rang again. It was my father this time. His voice was tired and sad. Mary, your mother told me what happened. I just spoke with Preston. I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for yesterday, for not standing up for you and Emma when Victoria destroyed that cake. I'm sorry for calling you this morning before knowing the full story. Preston told me everything, and I understand why he did what he did. I started crying. Dad, she destroyed Emma's birthday. She deliberately ruined the one special thing I'd saved so hard to give my daughter. And she said Emma didn't deserve it. I know, sweetheart. What Victoria did was unforgivable. Your mother and I have been enabling her behavior for too long, and we failed you and Emma yesterday. I'm going to do better. We're going to do better. Dad, I don't know if I can come around anymore. Not if Victoria is there. I can't expose Emma to that kind of cruelty. I understand. We'll figure something out. But right now, you focus on Emma. Give her the birthday she deserves. We hung up, and I spent the rest of the morning planning. Using Preston's money, I rebooked the community center I'd originally looked at. I called all of them as friends' parents and explained there had been a family emergency yesterday, but we were having a Doover party next Saturday. Every single family said they'd come. I ordered another cake from the same bakery, even more elaborate than the first one. I booked a princess character to come and meet Emma. I went all out because my daughter deserved it, and for once, I had the means to make it truly special. Throughout the week, my mother called several times. Victoria had apparently had a complete breakdown when she realized her wedding was actually canceled, and that Preston was serious about ending their relationship. She tried to contact other venues, but without Preston's money, and with such short notice, nothing was available. My mother begged me to talk to Preston to convince him to change his mind. I refused. I told her that Preston made his own decision based on Victoria's actions, and I wasn't going to manipulate him into staying with someone who'd shown such cruelty. But she's your sister, my mother pleaded, and Emma is my daughter. Victoria made her choice when she destroyed a little girl's birthday cake out of spite. She has to live with the consequences. Victoria tried to call me multiple times. I blocked her number. She showed up at my apartment on Wednesday, but I didn't let her in. She stood outside my door crying and yelling that I'd ruined her life, that I turned Preston against her, that I was jealous and vindictive. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, came out and told Victoria to leave or she'd call the police. Victoria finally left, but not before screaming that she'd never forgive me. Emma's Dover party was magnificent. The community center looked like a fairy tale. The new cake was even more stunning than the first. When the prince's character arrived and Emma's face lit up, I knew every struggle had been worth it. All of Emma's friends came, and this time there was no drama, just children laughing, playing, and celebrating. Emma kept hugging me and thanking me for the best birthday ever. She had no idea about the chaos that had erupted in the background, and I intended to keep it that way for as long as possible. Preston showed up briefly with my permission. He brought Emma a huge gift, a beautiful dollhouse that she'd been wanting for years. He apologized to her for having to leave the first party early, said there had been a grown-up emergency. Emma, sweet as she is, just thanked him for the gift and invited him to have cake. Watching Preston interact with Emma, I could see genuine kindness in him. He played a game with the kids, complimented Emma's dress, and was just genuinely nice. I understood why he'd made the decision he did. He deserved better than Victoria. Before he left, Preston pulled me aside. I want you to know that I've been documenting Victoria's behavior for a while now. The way she talks about people, the way she treats service workers, the cruel comments about Emma. I have text messages, recordings from when I confronted her about things. If she tries to cause you legal trouble or spread lies about you sabotaging the wedding, I have evidence that will show exactly why I ended things. I thanked him. I hadn't even considered that Victoria might try to blame me publicly for her failed engagement, but knowing Victoria, it was definitely possible. The following week was relatively quiet. My father came by to visit Emma, bringing her a belated birthday present. He apologized again, and we had a long talk about boundaries and expectations going forward. He agreed that Victoria needed to face consequences for her actions, and that enabling her had done nobody any favors. My mother was a different story. She called constantly, alternating between begging me to reconcile with Victoria and blaming me for not being more forgiving. She said that families forgive each other, that holding grudges was wrong, that Victoria was suffering enough with her broken engagement. I finally told her plainly, "Mom, Victoria didn't accidentally hurt Emma. She deliberately destroyed something that meant the world to my daughter, and she did it out of spite and jealousy. She said Emma didn't deserve a nice birthday cake. What kind of person says that about an 8-year-old child? Would you be asking me to forgive her if she'd hurt Emma physically instead of emotionally?" My mother went quiet. Then she said, "But she's my daughter too, Mary." "I know, Mom, but so am I, and Emma is your granddaughter. When you ask me to excuse what Victoria did, you're telling me that her feelings matter more than Emma's pain. You're telling me that keeping the peace is more important than protecting my child." We didn't speak for a few days after that conversation. When she finally called again, her tone was different. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began. "Your father and I talked, and we realized we've been unfair to you for a long time. We've let Victoria get away with too much because it was easier than confronting her behavior. We're sorry." It was a start. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement that mattered. Victoria, meanwhile, had apparently been telling anyone who would listen that I'd sabotaged her wedding out of jealousy. Some distant relatives and family friends reached out to me, confused, and asking for my side of the story. I simply told them that Preston had made his own decision based on what he witnessed, and they should ask him directly if they wanted details. Preston, true to his word, set the record straight when people approached him. He was honest about what he'd seen about Victoria's cruelty toward Emma and about his own decision to end the relationship. Some people believed him. Others didn't want to accept that Victoria was capable of such behavior. About 3 weeks after Emma's Dover party, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Victoria, handwritten, pages long. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter started with apologies. She said she'd been seeing a therapist since Preston left, that she was working on herself, that she understood now how much she'd hurt Emma. She said she'd been jealous of my relationship with my daughter, jealous of the love I had in my life, despite my struggles, jealous that I seemed happy even without the material success she'd achieved. She wrote about how she'd always felt pressure to be perfect, to be the successful daughter, to make up for my mistakes. She admitted that she'd resented me for having Emma. for derailing the family's expectations, and for still somehow being loved and accepted despite not living up to the standards she felt pressured to maintain. The letter went on to explain that destroying the cake had been an impulsive act of rage and jealousy. She'd been in the dining room looking at the beautiful cake I'd sacrificed so much to buy, and something in her just snapped. She thought about all the attention Emma was getting, all the money I'd spent on this party when I supposedly couldn't afford things, and she just destroyed it. She wrote that she immediately regretted it, but pride and anger made her double down when confronted. She'd convinced herself that I was being dramatic, that it was just a cake, that Emma would get over it. But seeing Preston's reaction, losing her wedding, losing her relationship, had forced her to confront what she'd done. The letter ended with a plea. She asked if there was any way I could forgive her, not now, but someday. She said she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again, but she wanted me to know that she was sorry and that she was trying to become a better person. I read the letter 3 times. I felt a lot of things. Anger, sadness, a tiny bit of sympathy, but mostly just exhaustion. Victoria had hurt my child, and while I believed she was sorry, sorry didn't undo the damage. That same week, something else happened that put everything into perspective. Emma came home from school crying. Not the dramatic tears of a child who didn't get their way, but the deep hiccuping sobs of genuine hurt. My heart immediately went into panic mode as I dropped everything and held her. Through her tears, she told me that one of her classmates, a girl named Sophia, had said mean things about her during recess. Sophia had told Emma that she didn't have a real family because she didn't have a dad, that her birthday party was weird because we had to do it twice, and that maybe if Emma's mom wasn't so poor, she could afford to do things right the first time. I was furious, not just at this child, who was clearly repeating things she'd heard from adults, but at the situation Victoria had created. The gossip about the canceled party, about Victoria's wedding drama, had apparently spread beyond our immediate family. Some parent had obviously discussed it within an earshot of their child, and now Emma was facing the consequences at school. I called the school the next morning and spoke with Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson. She was horrified when I explained what had happened and assured me she'd address it with both Sophia and her parents. She also mentioned that she'd noticed Emma had been quieter than usual lately, less engaged in class activities. That conversation made me realize that despite my best efforts to shield Emma from the adult trauma, she'd been affected more than I'd thought. Children are perceptive. They pick up on tension and stress, even when we think we're hiding it. While I scheduled an appointment with a child therapist that my insurance partially covered, Dr. Michelle Sanders was a warm, gentle woman who specialized in helping children process family trauma and transitions. Emma was hesitant at first, but Dr. Sanders had a way of making therapy feel like playtime, using toys and art to help Emma express her feelings. After the 3rd session, Dr. Sanders asked to speak with me privately. She explained that Emma was processing feelings of abandonment and confusion, not just about the birthday incident, but about the broader family situation. Emma had picked up on the fact that we no longer saw Victoria, that there was tension with her grandparents, and she was internalizing it as somehow being her fault. Children often believe they're the center of everything, Dr. Sanders explained. Emma knows the problem started at her birthday party, so in her mind, she caused all of this. She's carrying guilt that doesn't belong to her. That revelation broke my heart. I've been so focused on protecting Emma from Victoria's cruelty that I hadn't realized I needed to actively help her understand that none of this was her fault. Dr. Sanders coached me on how to have age-appropriate conversations with Emma about what had happened. We worked together on helping Emma understand that sometimes adults make bad choices, that family relationships can be complicated, and that love doesn't mean accepting hurtful behavior. Meanwhile, the situation with Sophia at school escalated before it got better. Sophia's mother, Karen, called me directly, and the conversation did not go well. She accused me of making a big deal out of kids being kids and suggested that if I wasn't so sensitive, Emma wouldn't be having problems. Maybe if you taught your daughter not to be so dramatic, she wouldn't be having issues with the other children, Karen said, her voice tripping with judgment. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of patience I had. Karen, your daughter told mine that she doesn't have a real family and mocked her for being poor. That's not kids being kids. That's bullying, and it's clearly reflecting attitudes she's hearing at home. Karen sputtered, trying to defend herself. But I wasn't done. I don't know what you've heard about my family's personal business, but discussing it where your child can hear and then allowing her to weaponize that information against my daughter is unacceptable. The school is handling this appropriately, and I expect you to address this behavior at home. She hung up on me, but the next day, Sophia apologized to Emma. It wasn't the most sincere apology I'd ever witnessed, clearly coached by a frustrated parent, but it was something. More importantly, Mrs. Patterson had a class discussion about kindness and respecting differences, which seemed to help reset the social dynamics. Through all of this, Sarah remained my rock. She'd been my best friend since college, had been there through my pregnancy, through Marcus leaving, through every struggle. She came over one evening after Emma was asleep, carrying a bottle of wine and the determination to make me talk about everything. "You're holding it all together for Emma," she said, pouring us both generous glasses. "But Mary, when do you get to fall apart? When do you get to process what your own sister did to you?" I hadn't really allowed myself to fully feel the betrayal. I'd been so focused on Emma, on the logistics, on managing family drama, that I compartmentalized my own hurt. But sitting there with Sarah, the dam broke. I cried about how much it hurt that my own sister had targeted my child. I cried about the years of subtle and not so subtle cruelty I'd endured from Victoria. I cried about feeling like I'd failed Emma by exposing her to someone capable of such meanness. I cried about the loss of the family dynamic I'd always hoped we could have. Sarah listened, helped me, and didn't try to fix anything. She just let me feel it all. When I finally exhausted myself, she said something that stuck with me. "You know what the difference is between you and Victoria? You feel things deeply and channel that into love and protection. She feels things deeply and channels it into destruction. That's not a reflection on you. That's a reflection on her choices." The next few weeks brought unexpected developments. My mother called to tell me that she and my father had given Victoria an ultimatum. They told her that if she wanted to maintain a relationship with them, she needed to take genuine accountability for her actions. Not just apologize, but demonstrate real change over time. "We also told her," my mother continued, her voice shaky, "that she owes Emma a sincere apology when the time is right, and that any future relationship with you and Emma is entirely up to you. We made it clear that we won't pressure you to reconcile and that we support your boundaries completely." I was surprised. My parents had never been good at confrontation, especially with Victoria. This represented a significant shift in family dynamics. My father visited the following weekend, and we had the most honest conversation we'd ever had. He admitted that he and my mother had unconsciously favored Victoria because she seemed to need less, seemed more together, seemed to fit their image of success. They had taken my stability and responsibility for granted, assuming I didn't need as much attention or validation. "We failed you," he said, tears in his eyes. "We failed you when you got pregnant, and we made you feel like a disappointment. We failed you when we didn't support you enough as you raised Emma alone. And we failed you catastrophically when we didn't immediately defend you and Emma from Victoria's cruelty." He told me he'd been doing his own therapy, that he was working on understanding the patterns that had led to this point. He asked if he could be more present in Emma's life, not as a way to ease his guilt, but because he genuinely wanted to be a better grandfather. I agreed with clear boundaries. He could see Emma regularly, but any mention of Victoria to her had to be approved by me first. If Emma asked questions, he needed to be honest, but age-appropriate. And if Victoria ever showed up unexpectedly when he was with us, he needed to leave with her immediately. He agreed to everything without hesitation. Over the next month, he proved himself reliable. He showed up for Emma's school play, took her to the park, helped her with a school project. Emma started opening up to him more, and I could see their relationship strengthening. One evening, about 2 months after the birthday incident, Preston reached out again. He asked if he could meet me for coffee to discuss something important. I was hesitant, but curious enough to agree. We met at a quiet cafe near my apartment. Preston looked different from the last time I'd seen him. More relaxed, somehow, less burdened. He thanked me for meeting him and got straight to the point. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," he began, "about my role in it, about the signs I ignored, about how long I let things go on before I took action. I was complicit in Victoria's behavior by not calling it out sooner." He explained that he'd grown up in a family where keeping up appearances was everything, where confrontation was avoided at all costs. When he saw red flags in his relationship with Victoria, he'd rationalized them, made excuses, convinced himself that everyone had flaws. But what she did to Emma, he continued, I couldn't rationalize that. Cruelty toward a child, deliberate destruction of something that brought joy to a little girl. That was a line I couldn't pretend didn't exist anymore. Preston told me he'd been in therapy too, working through his own patterns of conflict avoidance and people-pleasing. He'd realized that by staying silent about Victoria's behavior toward others, he'd enabled it to escalate. I wanted to tell you this because I know my actions cause fallout in your family. Canceling the wedding, ending things with Victoria, it all had ripple effects. And while I don't regret my decision, I want you to know that I understand it impacted you and Emma too. I appreciated his honesty. We talked for over an hour about family dynamics, about growth, about the complexity of loving people who hurt others. Preston shared that Victoria had tried to contact him multiple times, that she'd sent letters similar to the one she'd sent me, but he held firm in his decision. She needs to do the work for herself, not to get me back or to fix her reputation, he said. Real change doesn't come from wanting to undo consequences. It comes from genuinely understanding the harm you've caused and committing to being different. As our conversation wound down, Preston asked about Emma, how she was doing. I told him about the therapy, about the school situation, about how resilient she was proving to be. His eyes got misty, and he admitted that one of his biggest regrets was that he wouldn't get to be a positive presence in Emma's life long term. She's a special kid, he said. The world needs more people like her. People who stay kind when others aren't. You're raising someone remarkable, Mary. That conversation with Preston gave me a lot to think about. It reinforced my belief that consequences, while painful, were necessary. It also showed me that good people can be in relationships with people who do bad things. And recognizing that and walking away takes its own kind of courage. I didn't respond to the letter. Maybe someday I would, but not now. Emma was thriving, happy, and secure. She'd moved past the trauma of her ruined birthday party thanks to the amazing Dover celebration. My focus was on maintaining that happiness and security. My relationship with my parents slowly improved. They made efforts to see Emma regularly, always checking with me first to make sure Victoria wouldn't be around. They acknowledged their role in enabling Victoria's behavior and actively worked on setting boundaries with her. My father told me that Victoria had moved out of state, taking a job in another city. It was probably for the best, a chance for her to start over, to work on herself away from the family dynamics that had shaped her. Preston and I stayed in occasional contact. He was dating someone new, someone he said treated people with kindness and respect. He still sent Emma birthday and holiday gifts, which I appreciated. He'd become an unexpected positive presence in our lives. The story eventually faded from family gossip. New dramas arose. Other things captured people's attention. But the impact of what happened stayed with me. It taught me the importance of protecting my daughter, even from family. It showed me that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you can be the ones who hurt you most. And it reminded me that consequences, while painful, are necessary for growth and change. Emma asks about Victoria occasionally. She remembers her aunt clearly and knows there was conflict at her birthday party, though she doesn't understand all the adult complexities behind it. I tell her that Aunt Victoria made some choices that hurt people and needed to go work on being a better person. When she's older, if she wants to know more, I'll tell her a more complete version of what happened. But for now, I give her honest but age-appropriate answers that help her process without carrying burdens that aren't hers to bear. Looking back, I think about that moment in my parents' dining room, staring at the destroyed cake, listening to Victoria sneer that Emma didn't deserve it anyway. I think about how betrayed I felt, how heartbroken I was for my daughter, and I think about the strength it took to walk away from that party to choose Emma over family peace. I don't regret it, not for a second. Because at the end of the day, my job isn't to keep my sister happy or to maintain family harmony at any cost. My job is to protect my daughter, to show her that she matters, that she deserves beautiful things and special celebrations, and that people who hurt her don't get a free pass just because they share our blood. Emma is still 8, though her 9th birthday is coming up in a few months. It's been about half a year since all of this happened, and the wounds are still relatively fresh, but we're healing. She's confident, happy, and kind. She has her own sense of self-worth that I've worked hard to nurture. When she talks about her 8th birthday, she remembers the community center party, the princess character, the amazing cake. The first party has faded somewhat in her memory, which is exactly as it should be. As for Victoria, I heard she's doing better. She's continued therapy, built a new life in her new city, and has apparently grown a lot as a person. My mother says she asks about Emma sometimes, that she's genuinely trying to change. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. Time will tell. But regardless of Victoria's journey, mine continues. I'm still a single mom, still working hard to provide for my daughter, still making sacrifices to give her the best life I can. The difference is that now I know exactly where my boundaries are, and I'm not afraid to enforce them. Would I let Victoria back into our lives if she proved she'd truly changed? I honestly don't know. That's a bridge I'll cross if I ever come to it. For now, Emma and I are happy, healthy, and surrounded by people who genuinely love and support us. The whole experience taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, kindness, and love. It's about showing up for each other, protecting each other, and celebrating each other's joy rather than destroying it out of jealousy or spite. So, to anyone reading this who's dealing with toxic family members, who's struggling with the pressure to forgive unforgivable acts, just because they're family, I want you to know this. You're allowed to protect yourself and your children. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're related to you. Because at the end of the day, the family you choose, the family you build, the people who show up for you with love and respect, those are the relationships worth fighting for. Everything else, that's just biology.